Welcome back to Life and Hair. I've got this on because it's really quite chilly out there now, and it's quite chilly in my bedroom where I'm filming. I was looking at my daughter the other day with her glorious cascading curls, and it got me to thinking about the difference between being a young woman who's losing her hair or has got, the start of some hair loss, as opposed to being an older woman like myself. I'm in my early 50s, who's been dealing with hair loss for a long time, but actually whose hair loss has now become very, very evident. It's a funny thing I was thinking about, because I remember being that young woman and what it felt like. And I remember the panic that I used to feel if I thought that other people would notice it. It was something that I went to extreme lengths to try and avoid in a way that I don't now. I think as a young woman, there was a big emphasis on natural beauty and about considering what God gave you. And I do remember one of the guys that I was kind of dating at the time. He made this throwaway comment about a previous girlfriend, and he said she looked amazing even fresh out of the shower. And that really stuck with me, and it's something that I still remember and I still think about, because it made me think about how much importance was placed on fresh, radiant, natural beauty. You had beautiful, long, thick, glossy hair, and it was very important to have clear, dewy skin naturally, bright eyes naturally. Even the thought of needing glasses, was something that used to give me some concern when I was a younger woman. In a way that I simply can't afford to have now, otherwise I'd never leave the bedroom. And having that clear skin and that lovely hair, it used to signal sexual fertility and health and a vigor in your, in yourself, in your presentation, that was very, very important amongst my peers. And I've noticed even the young celebrities, like the Kardashians, etc., who do promote hair wearing, and who do have wigs, and they sell wigs and they show their wigs. There's still quite an important emphasis that says, well, even though I wear these wigs, I do actually have a very healthy head of hair underneath. And that's very, very important. I'm sure it would be a completely different story if that wasn't the case. Sometimes, as I do, I think about a story like the story of Queen Elizabeth I. I mean, she's the first historical figure who I was aware wore wigs in her later years. But amazingly, when she was a young woman, it was very important to her. Her red hair was a direct link with her royal heritage, that of King Henry VIII, her father, and her power and her God-given royal status was born through the showing of her red, long, healthy golden hair. I know that there are some portraits of her at quite an advanced age. I think maybe in her 40s, and there is one that's hanging in the Royal Portrait Gallery, showing her with this cascade of long, wavy red hair over her shoulders and down her back, and she's standing on a map of Europe, I think, where the empire was dominating the globe. And it's unlikely actually that she had that red hair at that age, at that time. And then as she progressed in years, she started wearing helper hair. And that helper hair was in the same red tone, you know, that she always had in her life. And of course, she never ever allowed anybody to see her without her red wig. I was thinking about that and about the identity that was born in that hair. You know, she had her royal identity tied up in it, her intrinsic power and authority tied up in it. You know, just the way that my kinky, curly Mediterranean hair, it was always such a large part of my identity. And when I used to visit Lebanon, on the occasions that I did, it didn't slip my notice how many other young ladies had the same kind of hair that I had. You know, it was like a national identity for me. It was a way of belonging with everybody else who looked like me. This long, curly, thick hair that I used to have. It was a part, I suppose, of my ethnic identity. And it was something that drew a lot of attention into my life. A lot of people, both men and women really, would approach me, and one of the first things they would say was, "Oh wow, I love your hair. Oh wow, you know, I bet your hair looks great down." And actually, as the decades wore on, people, you know, when I had a little bit more hair than I do now, and I used to wear it up in a ponytail, people would still approach me and say, "I bet your hair looks amazing down," because I guess it looked a little bit thicker when it was up rather than when it was down. And now it, it doesn't make much difference. But I used to think in my mind and not say anything. You don't know what you're talking about, you know, because my hair doesn't look anything like what you think it looks like. You think that I'm going to release it from that ponytail and it's going to be this amazing cascade of brown, kinky, curly hair. But that couldn't be further from the truth, unfortunately. And you know, so many people's personal beliefs and values are portrayed to the rest of the world through their hair. You know, what type of person are you? You know, you hear those stories about those fiery tempered, you know, red-headed folk, you know, or the very, very cool Grace Kelly types, you know, the blonde, cool, northern temperament. You know, you've either got the sleek look or you've got the wild look with hopefully the personality to go with it, and usually that is the case. But once you start losing your hair, or at least you've lost enough of your hair for it to really make a dent in your looks, so that people don't, the first thing they notice isn't your lovely thick hair with all its qualities, its different qualities. They just notice that your hair is thin and fine, and you've probably got hair loss problems. That's a huge loss of identity. Not so much identity, I guess, because you always feel the same identity inside. But it's a huge loss of a tool that communicates what your values are, who you are, where you come from, what you believe in. You know, are you wild and witchy? Are you dangerous? Are you sleek and sexy? Are you red and fiery? You know, are you sort of autumnal and auburn, you know, and brooding? My goodness, there are so many adjectives and similes that you can apply to hair colour. But I think the thing that I used to value most about my hair, the way it was, that I had a greater feeling of actual presence. I had a greater feeling of actual personal power. before I started wearing helper hair. I know that this sounds a bit crazy, but I wonder whether you know what I mean. I kind of felt more invisible. I felt less present. I felt of less consequence. There was something vital about me that had faded away. So now, thinking about my older years, especially moving into my 50s, and this has been more and more the case as I've gotten older. So, every time I move into a new decade, I have to re-evaluate what the impact of my hair loss has had on my life. But actually moving into my 50s, I do feel a bigger liberation. And I think the main reason for that is a lot of women in their 50s are either in perimenopause or having had menopause. And the expectation of that virility is not on them anymore. There isn't really that expectation that you need to be sexy and virile and fertile, because, that's no longer your role. You've entered into a new phase. You've entered into grandmother-in-waiting, if you will. I mean, some lucky ladies my age are already grandmothers and have been for a while. There's no real social need for grandmothers to be sexy. Grandmothers occupy a completely different place in society. And if you're not a grandmother, the same expectations apply. It's not so much of a big deal that you're losing your virility, you're losing your physical appeal. Even as I say these things, actually, it's quite sad. I mean, it's definitely a transition that needs to be managed, and it has been very important for me to take the time to process all of my subconscious feelings about this, because that cliche of the kind of balding middle-aged guy getting himself a sports car and a young blonde on his arm. By the same token, I don't particularly want to be described as mutton dressed up as lamb. I think that having helper hair doesn't fall into that category. I have achieved a lot in my life. I have proved a lot to myself, and I don't feel the same pressure to do the same things in my life that I used to. And as time has gone on, the attachment that I used to feel to who I used to be has gradually faded. And I really believe that it's the attachment to who you used to be that can cause the most distress when you are no longer able to hold on to that person. I mean, why put yourself through the angst of holding on to that younger version of yourself when you still have the option of reinventing yourself as a good version of how you are now? Once I realized this fact, and it must have been in my 30s as I realized that actually I'm not going to be getting any younger. And I started to think, well, how is that going to be influencing and affecting my marriage, my relationship with my husband, my attractiveness in the outer world, and in society. I knew very well that young, attractive women had an intrinsic power over people. I had heard that research showed that, beautiful people had an easier time. People responded to them more positively. I don't know personally whether that is particularly true or not, but these are the messages that were kind of rattling around in my head at the time. And I remember gingerly saying to Steve, well, Steve, I'm not going to be getting any younger, you know. And, you know, that was quite a difficult thing to say, because I was quite conflicted about those thoughts and ideas. But now I think that my attachment to who I used to be, well, has gone. And I'm at peace with that. I'm at peace with that. I'm at peace with the fact that the skin on my neck is kind of looser than it was. I know it's not as loose as it's going to get. So I'm kind of making the most of what I've got now. Okay, it's looser than it used to be. It's not as bad as it's going to be, so I can still celebrate it. Yeah, so once your attachment has gone, you can start giving yourself the space and the permission to play around with your identity. And that's a lovely thing. I'm never going to be that 20-year-old again, or that 30-year-old. I'm approaching my mid-50s, and I don't think I've ever enjoyed myself so much when it comes to playing with my appearance. And I think the reason for that is that I don't really have huge expectations of myself to be that person that I used to be. I'm not trying to recreate who I used to be. So now I can wear things that I would never have worn before. I can play around with colours that perhaps I didn't really give much credence to. And with the Dress Your Truth Type 2, I can give myself permission to have that soft and subtle woman vibe that is who I am really at heart. And I don't need to try so hard anymore to be somebody that I simply am not, somebody that I simply will never be. The other happy effect of celebrating who I am now, as I am, is that I feel that I'm giving my daughters a positive example. And I'm showing them that no matter how old you are, that you're still able to be creative. I don't like the idea that because you've reached a certain age, you basically have to put away all frivolity. Sometimes being creative and playful and having the space and time to think about yourself, even though that is really discouraged in society, I think, for a middle-aged woman, allows you not to be destroyed by negative thoughts. And by negative thoughts, I mean thoughts that it's over, you've reached the end of the road, you no longer have any sexual desire, there is no role for that in your relationship, you're over the hill, you're past it, there's no point trying to adorn yourself, there is no role for you in presenting a happy, upbeat, colourful, optimistic persona to society. Leave all of that for the young women, leave all of that for the young men. You now have got other things to focus on. And actually, couldn't you have applied that logic to the entirety of your life? You could easily have told yourself these things at any age. You know, right now, I have the opportunity of redefining what hair loss means to me. I'm very aware of the devastating effects and the shame that it used to have when I was younger. All right, but that same hair loss, it's the same hair loss. I'm still experiencing it and having to deal with it and manage it every single day. But now it means something else to me. It no longer means that I'm not that vital, viable woman. Now it just means that I can actually use helper hair in a creative way to make quite a nice impression that I'm very happy with. Another way of putting that is that I'm celebrating myself. I'm celebrating myself exactly as I am today, and I think it's all right. I think how I am is quite all right. I don't feel ashamed. And just to demonstrate that, I have made my Instagram public. So that means that all of my friends, all of my ex-boyfriends, all of my work colleagues will pretty soon be getting a notification, you may know Life and Hair, follow them now. And they may very well check out my Instagram. If they check out my Instagram, they'll find my YouTube. I'm no longer prepared to hide. I'm a 50-something woman. I've got fine thinning hair. Get over it. I certainly have. Yeah, I just get so fed up sometimes trying to please everybody and pretend that I'm this ageless person, which doesn't actually work. And so now the favourite part of the day is here, and I have decided to wear my old friend, can you guess? MILA, 8RH14, John Renault, full monofilament top, beautiful lace front, no rooting, and the 8RH14 is a medium brown with some darker blonde highlights. I recently washed her. I've had her for over 2 years. I was all prepared for her to have given up the ghost by now. I'm pretty pleased to say that she has responded amazingly well to being washed and conditioned. And if anybody wants to know how I do it, I actually used a hand wash detergent, and I used very little of this detergent. And then I put some John Renault conditioner on her, which I bought from Simply Wigs, I think. I believe so. When I wear her, I just spray her down with the John Renault Easy Hair that they sell. I think I bought it from Simply Wigs. And the beautiful thing about MILA is that she's a very easy style to wear. You can dress up this style very well. But if you want to wear something during the day just to run a few errands, which is exactly what I'm going to be doing today, I'm actually going to go to the charity shop to hand in some clothes and shoes that are too big for me. And I don't really want long flowing locks, you know. I also don't need to straighten my hair. Actually, I can pull out my hair here at the side. Do you see? Not bad. Not bad at all. And it's ready to go, really. It's ready to go. It just blends in that edge quite nicely. Probably after I've been to the charity shop, I'm going to pop in to Costa. You know, very, very doable to pin this style up. And I've often thought and wondered actually what this style would be like actually in an updo, and I've never tried an updo with this style. But you know, it's amazing really. You can put this style on in the morning, knowing that you're due to be going out, and just put it up in a messy updo, which I find one of the most irresistible things in wearing fake hair, in wearing helper hair. It's much easier, isn't it, when you've dyed your hair and you've done your roots. Cute. Cute. So yes, this person that you see is not the person that they used to be in their 20s, 30s and 40s. Those days are gone forever. I've never looked like this before, but it's not a bad look. I don't feel that whatever I've lost in that natural virility and beauty that I used to have, I feel I've compensated for quite well in a new and creative way. Now, I've got a birthday party to go to in December, and I'm not dreading it. Now, imagine had I had to go to that birthday party with my thinning fine hair up in a ponytail. There's no joy in that. There is no joy, there is no self-expression for me. For me, and I'm talking about personally. You know, I support women who do their life however they want to do it. I shouldn't really need to say that. This is a personal journey that I'm simply sharing with you. This is how I feel. This is what helper hair has brought to me. This helper hair and the looks that I create with it, I feel I'm demonstrating a sense of positivity and creativity to my daughters. So whatever problem that they might face, they know that you don't need to allow those negative feelings and those negative voices and fears to affect you. You don't need to hide away. You don't need to apologize for yourself. Hair loss is something that happens to people, all people, children, women, men, young, old. Everybody can be subject to hair loss. And you don't have to be ashamed. So that's my message to you. This is something that I wanted to share with you while I got ready for my day out. Believe me, I'm going to be wearing a scarf today because it's freezing out there. It's been so nice to chat to you, and I look forward to hearing what your opinions are about what I've said. Until next time.